Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The Wa to end all Was is upon us, as the greenskins are going to be embroiled in a civil war, as we have Supermunchkin on the green greenskins, and we'll have RTK PauluS on the red greenskins in this Warhammer World Championship matchup from the third round. And we are going to be going over the armies here real quick. So on both sides, we are going to have a bunch of Savage Orc Biggins for that front line. And we do have a couple of Stone Trolls supporting that as well, with the 8 Peak Loonies going to be coming in. They are unbreakable. They do have their Fanatics, and usually they'll be able to pay for themselves off of even a single Fanatics cast. A very good unit to be bringing. That Goblin Great Shaman is going to be rolling on in with that Vindictive Glare, Itchy Nuisance for a nice little bit of an AoE debuff of melee attack base weapon damage. We also have Gorkle Fix It for a little bit of control, Arcane Conduit, Crown Command, and Don't Even Try It for a nice little damage spell. We do have a Goblin Big Boss on the Supermunchkins side, going to be rolling in with that Don't Eat, or They Needs Stabbin', so that's minus 30 armor, minus 24 melee defense for them. And then on the flanks, we're going to be having quite a bit of mobility for some of that skirmish cast. We have some Force Goblin Spider Riders with some Goblin Wolf Rider Archers on one side. Same thing going to be on the other side with that same trio of units, so four Force Goblins in total, 2 Goblin Wolf Riders, and then we have an Orc Boy and a Goblin just to round things off for the army. But that's going to be Supermunchkin's army. Now we have RTK PauluS, which is pretty much the exact same thing with only slight differences. We do have a Goblin Great Shaman going to be bringing pretty much the same set of spells for PauluS here. So we do have the Sneaky Stabbin', so a little bit of increase on there, so it'll give us that armor piercing. Melee attack does help against Stone Trolls quite effectively. We have Vindictive Glare, Itchy Nuisance. They don't have Gorkle Fix It, but we do have Arcane Conduit, Crown of Command, and Don't Even Try It. Same 3 last items. For the front line, it is going to be some Savage Orc Biggins, but it is going to be mixed in with the Night Goblins, which is the 8 Peak Loonies here. And then we're going to have a couple of Orc Boys on one flank, and 2 more on the other. The backline is going to be just a couple of Stone Trolls with a Giant River Troll Hag coming in with Spirit Leech and Mither. So instead of that Gorkle Fix It, you do have that Mither for a nice little bit of control on their side as well. And that Spirit Leech will just kind of help for some nice steady damage in addition to that all of the spells on the Goblin Great Shaman. On the flanks, it is going to be some Force Goblin Spider Riders on this side, so there's going to be 4 of which in total. And if we swing on over to the other side, that is all there's going to be in terms of the skirmish cav for RTK PauluS. So foregoing a couple of the Forest Goblin or Wolf Rider Archers, and instead just going with a 4 and a little bit wider on the infantry side. See if that's going to be enough though, because the infantry, the value is a little bit higher on Supermunchkin's side, as he does have, I guess it's only 1 more Savage Orc Biggin, so maybe not quite so much because there is quite a few Orc Boys on the other side. But all of these skirmishers for Supermunchkin is going to be firing away, and just an exchange of Vindictive Glares, but that Vindictive Glare from PauluS going straight into the Force Goblin Spider Riders, just kind of whittling them down a little bit. But that Goblin Great Shaman from Supermunchkin is going to be going straight for the Goblin Great Shaman on PauluS. So it's going to be a very, I guess, mirrored matchup for sure here. Armies very, very similar. These Orc Boys trying to screen out these Force Goblin Spider Riders a bit, but that is going to get them pretty isolated right now. And how these Orc Boys could easily just kind of turn around, and that is exactly what they're going to be doing. They're going to be getting a nice charge down into these Orc Boys, surrounding by all of these Force Goblin Spider Riders. Should be able to make quick work of these guys on that flank, and even the skirmishers up in the front still taking a bit of damage here. That Goblin Great Shaman is being a bit of a nuisance there, but it is starting to take a little bit of damage that they do need to be careful. I mean, the Goblin Great Shaman on the Arachnoid Spider does not have the greatest of base leaderships, and just the skirmishers though on this far flank for PauluS is doing very well, just slowly whittling down these Orc Boys. They are unable to really catch the rest of the units, and a nice charge in by PauluS's Orc Boys should be enough to break these guys. Their leadership is going to be wavering, and I think that another volley should cause these guys to rout, and that's one of the infantry units down and dusted. Now for the main line engagement, it is just about to get underway. Savage Orcs going to be clashing across the front lines right into these Stone Trolls, and we do get a Fanatics going right through the line, hitting the Fanatics of the other side, and that is a very nice little target there, whittling them down because they need to get down to 25% health, and then they cannot use their abilities anymore. But it looks like we have a dual Itchy Nuisance on both sides of the engagement here, so, and a Gorkle Fix It on one, and it is just a mosh pit of just poison trolls. We do have the trolls getting terrified on one side on Supermunchkin, and both of the Arachnoid Spiders are dueling it out with Stone Trolls on both sides of them, trying to support And it looks like Supermunchkin is pulling ahead ever so slightly in this center engagement. PauluS is going to be wanting to pull out his Goblin Great Shaman, kind of pull back, get some of those those Vindictive Glares off onto the other side, and just kind of let the rest of his infantry grind away, because they are doing quite well. The Goblin Great Shaman both popping that Arc Encounter. A Vindictive Glare right into the back might be enough to break the backs of PauluS's Ragnarok, but really the engagement is going fairly decently for PauluS. However, we are getting a nice bit of reserves coming in, and is going to be kind of slowly whittling through the rest of what they have, and it's just an overwhelming force here as Supermunchkin Stone Trolls do return to the field, and there is going to be that Vindictive Glare going to be going straight for that Goblin Great Shaman, making good connection, doing a nice bit of damage on top of that. The Wah goes off. I believe this one is for Supermunchkin, and I think the Wah is going off on both sides right now, so just counteracting each other, getting leadership and immune psychology on both sides. But really, PauluS needs to be very careful with his Goblin Great Shaman, because that is the source of terror that he needs to really kind of help break the backs of those Stone Trolls. However, on the flanks, you can see that he is doing rather well. His Orc Boys coming back, and all of his skirmishers have been able to deal with the flanks of Supermunchkin's forces rather effectively, and that's going to allow them to get a nice little surround off on what is left. A nice rear charge in by the Stone Trolls of RTK PauluS here. So we get Stone Trolls on both sides of this infantry fight. He does have his Orc Boys starting to get a little bit broken down, but he is whittling down the Stone Trolls. The other side, he is getting a rout there, though his own are going to be routing to the Savage Orc Biggins, getting a nice little charge into that. Itchy Nuisance goes down. I believe this is on to PauluS from Supermunchkin. This is quite the mosh pit of units, all the same ones on both sides, but fun nonetheless. Both sides slowly regrouping as their routing units are once again condensing into another push into this center engagement. But so far, having that Goblin Great Shaman just be constantly engaged for Supermunchkin is really helping out. He's able to trade a lot better into PauluS's front line, though PauluS has been able to win the skirmish fight rather well, so he does have that bit of poison, and that poison, having that in the late game, is going to be very, very helpful, especially if he can provide that across the entire front line. He's going to be allowing his units to trade just that little bit better. We are going to be seeing another Vindictive Glare from Supermunchkin, trying to whittle down PauluS's Ragnarok as much as possible. We are starting to lose out on some of the ammunition from PauluS's Force Goblin Spider Riders, but they do have that poison in melee. And the Goblin Big Boss is going to be getting routed off from Supermunchkin, while that Giant River Troll Hag still going very, very strong in the infantry fight, and the Goblin Great Shaman from Supermunchkin is itself getting whittled down. It's about half health, but faring much better than PauluS, as it is just trying to kind of avoid the heavy hitters of Supermunchkin's side, just wanting to stay away from the Stone Trolls. But these Vindictive Glares just continuing to just tear in. This one does fly just ahead of the Goblin Great Shaman, missing its mark a little bit due to its animations. But we do have more Stone Trolls returning to the field from Supermunchkin, as the other side's trolls are going to be slowly getting whittled down. These guys are going to be crowding off. They still have 8 models left, but these guys coming in with 9, a little bit better in terms of overall HP. And that Giant River Troll Hag did have They Need Stabbing popped on him, so that Goblin Big Boss is back in the fight. Going to be trying to chase down that Giant River Troll Hag, as most of PauluS's units are kind of being forced to rout here, and there's not really a whole lot left to really hold back the greenskins of Supermunchkin. Definitely looks like he is going to be pulling ahead just ever so slightly. And I think that balance power tipping on the edge of army losses, and there they go. Supermunchkin does take game 1. Hopefully you were able to figure out which side was winning here in that fight, but quite similar armies as we're going to be able to see here in that after battle report. So let's update the scorecard real quick. Supermunchkin does take the first game, and now we'll kind of roll on into the second game right after we get through all of these units on both sides. So taking an overall look down, we're able to see everything at once. We do see, there's a heavy Orc Boys. You do have a couple of Savage Orc Biggins on PauluS, but just the 3 Savage Orcs on Supermunchkin. And I think just with that little bit more in terms of mobility, though PauluS did do very well in the mobility fight. I think he did kind of pull ahead ever so slightly in that. So if we kind of take a look at all of that, nothing really was too exorbitant. These guys did do quite well at 690. Orc Boys, I think we're just able to pay for the Savage Orcs. Not too well on that side. And the AP Cloonies not able to do quite as good either. Rest of the infantry, not really anything to really write home about. The stone trolls did okay as well, but again, it wasn't anything like super over the top. And the Goblin Great Shaman, which is probably the biggest misplay for PauluS in this fight, was that Goblin Great Shaman. Goblin Great Shaman got a little, was probably not focusing down the opponent's Great Shaman as much and took way too much damage and all those Vindictive Flares. I mean, it is a bit of RNG as well because you are just engaging two big single entities, so kind of depends on how the dice rolls to see which side's going to be landing more hits than the other. But definitely need to be focusing the opponent's only source of terror on both sides, and that was kind of really what the Supermunchkin was able to do. He was able to keep his terror in that infantry fight, while PauluS was forced to kind of pull his back and wasn't getting those terror routes at the critical times that he needed to. For the rest of the forces on Supermunchkin side this time, just kind of going over the skirmishers, definitely doing better on PauluS side for the skirmishing than for Supermunchkin. You just kind of see a lot of these guys just really kind of lackluster here. Only a couple of them breaking 400. The rest were in like the 200s, even these guys below 100. So definitely trading rather well. So good trade on that side. Stone Trolls, pretty much exactly so. 961, 751 versus 934 and 792. So pretty much the exact same values for the two Stone Trolls were very comparable. The Savage Orcs, on the other hand, is what really kind of pushed the advantage over to Supermunchkin side, is you can just see the value trade on these guys. So you have 1,000 on two of them and 800 on the other, much better than PauluS's 700 and 450. So that was really a big thing. So it was the support that they had were able to do so much better. AP Gloom is a little bit better, but overall not too bad. These Orc Boys, that was probably like one of the only really big misplays. Like these Orc Boys just got so super isolated and just shot to pieces. But yeah, that center front line and that Goblin Great Shaman for Supermunchkin was what really, that difference in play between the two sides was what really pushed it over to Supermunchkin side. But a very interesting first match we had. Hard to really follow it too effectively with both sides having pretty much the same thing, but we got through it nonetheless. So let's roll right on in to game two. The Asur ride out in force for Game 2 of the Warhammer World Championship matchup between Supermunchkin and PauluS. We'll have Supermunchkin on the High Elves, and he'll be facing PauluS's Lizardmen. So for the High Elf army, that front line is going to be entirely comprised of White Lions of Trace, and they do have a nice bit of armor piercing. They have some decent armor to boot as well, and they also do have a nice little bit of missile resistance, 30% in total, which does allow them to kind of tank some of that Chameleon Skink fire a little bit better than most other of the units for the Asur. And then they will be backed up by a trio of archers as well, just providing some standard long-range fires, just kind of a little deterrent to those Chameleon Skinks. I mean, the Chameleon Skinks do have missile resist themselves, but just that focus fire from all of these units will be able to bring them down bit by bit. We do have some Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers as well, two of those really going to be forcing the engagement for the Lizardmen and getting them to come to the High Elves, and then they will be having the Anvil of the High Elf Cavalry, going to be 3 Dragon Princes in total. Going to be Roman that back line. Could be hitting the Lizardmen quite hard indeed, as they have a meaty stat line looking to provide some nice bit of roaming support. And there is going to be Alariel the Radiant as well for the Lord, as she is going to be rolling on in with that Star of Averlorn. She does have Tempest as well against any possible Pterodon play. We do have the Shield of Thorns for her spells, along with Earthblood, so a nice little bit of AoE healing for all of those Dragon Princes, and of course that Star of Averlorn is going to really be able to heal those guys up, and the more elite the unit is, the more they are going to be benefiting from these abilities. We also do have the Shield Stone of Isha, which gives 12% physical resist in an AoE, in addition to the Boon of Isha, which gives magic damage and immune to psychology in an AoE, and especially when the Lizardmen are almost certainly going to be bringing some form of Dino with that terror, it is going to be very helpful to keep that front line engaged. And then also, I mean, the Dragon Princes themselves today do not have immune to psychology, so that is also going to be very helpful for those guys. Now for the Lizardmen, going to be led by PauluS. We're going to be taking a quick look at what he's got for us today. We do have Source Warriors for that front line stretching all the way across, so there is going to be 4 of those in total. And then on the flanks, we do have some Skink cohorts with Javelins. On the other side, it is going to be the cohort of Sotek, and they do have Poison in melee, as well as Armor Piercing, and they are Unbreakable to boot as well, and they have a nice little ability that does prevent their units from dying, but they will still be able to take damage. They will hold them right down to 1. So a nice little thing, just to kind of absorb some of like the shock damage or a big like banishment or something of that nature. And then we're going to have some chameleon skinks in front. Pretty common occurrence in almost every single matchup. These guys have that missile resist, so they're very resistant to other skirmish cav or just archers in general, 40%, which is pretty considerable. They have fire as well moving, they have stock, and they have 360 fire to boot as well, and poison in ranged and in melee with a pretty decent missile damage as well. For the backline, it is going to be some Cold One Riders, and then we're going to be having 2 Feral Stegodons as well in that backline. Both of these going to be having Fear, Terror, Armor Piercing, High Armor, and bonus versus Infantry, and they're going to be wrecking havoc among the High Elf front line, and they are all going to be directed by Mazdamundi, as he's going to be riding on in on Zlak, bringing a ton of items of himself. So he does have the Sunburst Standard of Hexawaddle, which gives a 12% missile resist and 9 melee defense in an AoE centered around himself in a 40-meter radius. Of course, he has the Cold-Blooded, and he's going to be needing those for those feral Stegodons to boot. We have Net of Amnentok, Harmonic Convergence, which gives 24 melee attack and melee defense. And then we have Apotheosis, we have Shield the Old Ones, is Bound Banishment, and the Ruination of Cities. So it's going to be very hard to bring down old Lord Mazdamundi, especially when he's going to be flanked by these 2 Feral Stegs. Lots of armor to get through, and lots of HP as well. So let's get rolling on into it, as the High Elves going to be firing away with their Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, going to be just forcing the lizardmen, as I was kind of mentioning before, to come directly to them. So they're going to be able to just continue plucking away, and especially when they have their single fire on, they're actually going to be able to do some decent damage to like either the cavalry, the Stegs, or to Lord Mazdamundi himself. But Lord Mazdamundi has a ton of missile resist, so probably not the best target to be firing in against. It looks like the shots are going to start raining in towards him, hitting him a little bit in the flank, but he's going to be tanking that fairly well. And yeah, the lizardmen are just kind of trying to use the trees for a little bit of cover as they're slowly approaching the High Elf formation. And the High Elves are just going to be very content to just kind of sit back, relax, and wait for them to come into that kill zone, as all of the archers are going to be lying in wait, going to be trying to get some nice hits in. And I believe we have some of the Dragon Princes off on this far flank. The Stegodon and the Cold One Riders going to be looking to kind of screen them out, make sure that if they do decide to charge in, they're going to be having to face some heavy armor. And then these Cold One Riders, with the support that's around them, should actually be able to beat one of these Dragon Princes. However, there is still going to be 2 more Dragon Princes, putting some pressure onto the other flank. Going to be getting a nice charge into the Saurus Warriors. We do have the cohort of Sotek coming in, as well as just shots from the Chameleon Skinks, and really that was probably not really the best trade. Just look how much damage these Dragon Princes have had, and they did only charge into Saurus Warriors, so all this poison is just coming in, slowing these guys down. They're just getting plucked away, dropping models even, and that is not something they want to be seeing. And Earthblood is going to be going down on top of them, healing them up, and Mazdamundi starting to take a little bit of damage. I do hear a Net of Amnentok going to be hitting the front line here, probably a little too early on that cast. There isn't really a very strong follow-up, but it is going to be following up with a Banishment. Now that is going to be able to do quite a bit of damage, as it does kind of go right through those Dragon Princes, doing a bit, and it's going to be following them right on in to these White Lions, or it's just going to continue right down the gap here, just clipping those White Lions. And then in comes the charge of that Feral Stegodon and the Cold One Rider. So a little slow on the draw by Supermunchkin there. Dragon Princes do take a ton of damage so early on. I mean, they are already at 50% health. Looks like we are going to be getting a Shield of Thorns a little late on the draw, though. They've already taken so much there. But Lord Mazdamundi kind of just sitting back in the rear here, going to be trying to hit as many of these archers as possible. And there goes a Ruination. All of it. Oh man, did that archer just take a ton of damage from that last tendril, as it just rips through it, routing off those archers. And that is going to make Mazdamundi just a little bit more confident, charging on in, as he does pop that Shield through the wounds. But down goes that Star of Avalorn, healing up all of these very expensive units, so that these Dragon Princes and those White Lions going to be taking a nice bit of healing off of that. I mean, Alarielle is going to be healing a bit, but she's already pretty much full health. But yeah, health is going to be very much needed. Even though balance power is slightly in the High Elf favor against the rest of the formation here, the White Lions trading very well into the Saurus Warriors kind of across the board. The cohort of Sotek is getting taken down by these Dragon Princes, having some early trades that went fairly well for them. But these White Lions, yeah, they are just doing very, very well to the Saurus Warriors. That armor piercing and the high armor doing quite well. But Lord Mazdamundi is now getting into that backline, charging through these archers as the Eagle Bolt Throwers continue just kind of slowly slowly pluck away bit by bit as the Dragon Princes do charge into the Saurus Warriors who have gotten onto these Eagle Claw bolt throwers, and they should be able to peel them off in due time, at least quick enough to allow the Eagle Claw bolt throwers to stay in the fight for just a little bit longer. We do have some of these archers going to be terrifying off, but they are still going to be returning momentarily. Dragon Princes, though, going to be looking to get a nice surround in off onto Lord Mazdamundi, trying to just kind of slowly whittle through his very heavy armor. And if they can bog him down, this can kind of prevent his move, but he is going to be a very hard target to do that. He has a ton of mass, and he is just a monster of a unit. Going to be getting a charge through these white lines with the assistance of that Feral Stegodon. Feral Stegodon has taken a bit of damage, but looks like we are going to be getting, I think that is a net followed up by, I mean, we have a Shield of Thorns on them. Going to be looking to counteract some of the damage that Lord Mazdamundi is going to be dishing out, but he's going to be dropping down a banishment. Now, unfortunately for these Dragon Princes, physical resistance does not help against that banishment, and that's going to be doing a nice bit of damage. There might be able to rout them off, but it looks like they are going to be able to stabilize, and they do have that unit psychology with L'Oreal so close by, but Mazdamundi is just getting riddled with arrows at this point as he is just getting dragged through the mud. All of these bolt throwers, the archers, even though he has some very impressive missile resist, it is not immunity, so he is still going to be taking damage if he does get focused down enough, and he definitely needs to start using some of that Winds of Magic to heal himself up with that apotheosis that he has, but he is going to be routing off just as a bound, or the Ruination Cities, and it does do a nice bit of damage, but not as good as that first cast, so he is able to get a final send-off before he himself gets sent off the field, and things are looking very bleak for the Lizardmen here. Hyle's looking very strong in the late game. All of their infantry, I mean, the White Lion's Trace have been able to beat the Saurus very effectively, and there is still going to be, I think there's some Dragon Princes still left on the field, but most of it is just, I mean, all of these White Lions, I think, is just too much for all of the Lizardmen to deal with. We do have some of the Dragon Princes are going to be trying to chase down Lord Mazdamundi, and these Chameleon Skinks are going to try and do what they can to kind of peel them off, but unfortunately it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. And of course, L'Oreal is still at full health, plenty of ammunition on all of the archers. So really it is going to be just two Feral Stegs. Some Chameleon Skinks are all that is going to be remaining, and maybe Mazdamundi might be able to come back, but but all of the Lizardmen is just so beat down at this point. The roaming Dragon Princes should be able to kind of finish off everything that is left for the Lizardmen. It looks like that is going to be army losses, and that'll be all she wrote for the series. Supermunchkin is going to take it 2-0. Let's take a little look at that after battle report. Update the scorecard as well to reflect the final score of the series, and just kind of see how things went on both sides. So for the Lizardmen, led by PauluS, the Feral Stags actually doing very well. 1100 on these guys, 800 on them. And then the Cold One Riders, unfortunately, though, they did not do so well, with only 288. Chameleon Skinks doing quite well, 600, 400, 600 between them. Even the Skink Cohort's doing all right. Cohort not doing quite as high. I mean, getting 500, but they do cost, I think, 800 in total. For those guys, they pay a lot for that Unbreakable. And then the Saurus Warriors were just completely outmatched with those White Lions, and they did not last long at all against them. Only a couple of them getting some decent value, while the rest were kind of just really lackluster. And Mazdamundi himself, while he did get 1900, he is a very expensive lord, especially when he is on Zlak. So unfortunately, he did not do what he was hoping for, but he did turn into pretty much a pincushion throughout that fight. Kind of what happens when you do bring him, because he does get focused down, and it does take a lot of focus to bring him down, though, so oftentimes he doesn't necessarily have to pay for himself, but nothing else really did too exorbitantly well, so the Lizardman army just kind of fell a little flat there. The Eagle Claw bolt throwers, though, one of these guys got 2100 in total damage value, just continually just shots into the hides of all of the big dinos. And then the other one even getting 800, so a lot of value between these two. Then we have the Dragon Princes, who did okay. We have 1300, 1200 of those two. This one only did get 600. Archers did very well as well. One of them getting 1000. The one that got Ruination very early on did not do so well, only 198. And then the front line of the White Lions of Trace traded very well indeed against those Saurus Warriors. And then not really expecting too much from L'Oreal. She was pretty much just a healing battery for the rest of her army, and she did do quite well in that regard. Some nice Star of Everlords, those Earthbloods. A little late on some of them, but Overall, the high elves definitely were able to kind of just continually be free to fire. So I think a little bit more mobility on the lizardman side may have been in order here. I know it's kind of hard to really contend against 3 dragon princes, but they needed to put some pressure on to the archers, on to like the eagle bolt throwers. So like a solar bastillodon, I think would have been a nice little tool to deal with that, because they do quite well against very tightly packed archers, or even against those eagle bolt throwers, able to take off models when they are able to fire in. So I think trade out to the stegs for the solar bastillodons. They may have been a little bit of a different fight, but nonetheless, very fun series. I do hope you enjoyed the matches, especially our lovely identical mirror match that we started off with. But otherwise, that is all I'm going to have for you today. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good one.